So here are the best decks to help you climb to Legend. The first one is Face Hunter. It's been Face Hunter for the past 2 weeks, and I think that it's still ridiculously strong. You have good direct damage that doesn't even need to target, so you're able to play around Mage and Rogue pretty well. This deck has actually a pretty good amount of removal and board presence, so you're able to compete with Token Druid. And the only thing this really loses to is hard control decks, which aren't really in the meta right now, so this deck is in a prime position to be a top tier deck. The next deck on this list is actually Deathrattle Demon Hunter, which I think is surprisingly better than Aggro Druid and Libram Pally, and let me explain why. This deck has everything that you need for it to be successful in the current meta. It's fairly fast, it's got good direct damage from hand that the opponent can't really stop, Illidari Inquisitor and weapons like the Felsteel Executioner, and it's got really sticky boards, so control decks like Mage don't have the ability to kill your minions over and over and over again. They use a fire sale on a board of Razor Boars, Ectoplasms, and Beastmasters, and next thing you know, they have to deal with a whole new board you didn't have to pay mana for. It's really, really strong, it does well in the current meta, and I would recommend it. The next deck on this list is this version of Aggro Token Druid. Not the one with the Far Watch pose, the one with Cult Neophyte. Far Watch pose is a very overrated card in this deck. Not in general, but in this deck it's not very good because it can't attack, which basically defeats the purpose of being aggro. Yes, it has some cool synergies. You can summon 2 of them, which slow down the opponent a ton, but at the same time, again, they can't attack. Buffs with Arbor Up aren't very good, and Greybow, if you get the Deathrattle on a Far Watch post, the opponent just ignores it. So Cult Neophyte also slows down the opponent, while also allowing you to continually apply pressure. This deck is the highest win rate deck in the game right now, just looking at the pure stats from Diamond to Legend. Obviously, it's going to make a place on this list, and let's move on to the next one. So the next deck on this list is Secret Libram Paladin. Now take the 4th place rating with a grain of salt. I do think these top 4 decks are all S tier. This is just in the order of my personal win rate, and this one just happened to do worse than the other 4. But all of these decks are going to be really, really effective for climbing. Secret Libram Paladin is no exception. You've got the good early game package with a couple of 1-drops and the secrets to slow down your opponent. Obviously a good mid game with Alliance Bannerman to make your minions stronger, and the Alders to make your Librams cheaper. And then really good late game with Lady Liadrin, Varian, Libram of Hope, and maybe even Devote Pupils with a nice little like cheese pump on them. At the top of A tier is actually Evolved Shaman, and this is because I went 19-5 with this deck recently in Legend. So yes, I do think that it might be a little bit generous to put it this high, but I consider this a very solid dark horse option that I've had an absolute blast playing. It's relatively easy to construct, only really needing 1 legendary with the Instructor Fireheart, and again, the win rate is solid. Is it gonna keep up this 19-5 win rate? Probably not, but even if it loses the next 10 games in a row, it's still above 50%, and it's got more than a 30-game sample size. So overall, I think I would obviously recommend this deck, but this one's a little bit more of a dark horse. The next deck on this list is Elemental Shaman, and the reason why it's here and not in S tier is because I think it's just a little bit worse than the other ones. It doesn't have as much burn damage as Face Hunter, and its board presence isn't as solid or consistent as Deathrattle Demon Hunter, Aggro Druid, or Libram Paladin. So overall, I think this deck falls just short, but it's still really cheap, with one of the legendaries being a core card and the other one being a card you also need in Evolved Shaman. The deck does still have a good amount of burst damage with spells and weapons, along with really good efficient minions. Like, nothing can really beat Kindling Elemental turn 1 into Arid Stormer turn 2 for a 2/5 Wind Fury immediately, with also Rush to kill off the opponent's minions. Obviously, this deck is going to still be very, very, very powerful. I just think it's slightly weaker, like 0.5% win rate weaker, but that's why I can't push it up that 1 extra slot. The next deck on this list is Quest Mage. I know it says Antonidas. This is just because this is my Antonidas build. I took out 1 Wand Maker and put in Grand Magus Antonidas because it actually really helps into the mirror match, because neither of you are really going to be able to finish the quest that quickly because you don't have targets, because neither of you guys run minions. But if you can play 3 fire spells and then drop Grand Magus Antonidas, it is 18 damage of burst, and if you finish the quest, it's even more. And you can easily finish off your opponent with fireballs and ignites from that point. So it's just for the mirror match. If you don't want to run Antonidas or don't have him, you can easily run another Wand Thief. Both work for sure. But this deck is obviously one of the strongest decks out there right now. It's one of the most popular decks out there right now. And it really only requires 1 legendary in Sorcerer's Gambit. So definitely try this deck out if you haven't. I will hate you. Let this be known. I really hate this deck. but I can't blame the fact that it's cheap and effective. If you want to play, I can't really blame you. Next deck on this list is Quest Hand Warlock, or Quest Warlock, whatever you want to call it. And I actually think that this deck has really been growing on me. I took out the 1 heal card for a Hellfire because it helps progress the quest, and it's good removal, and the 3 damage means that it does really, really well against Aggro Druid, which has a lot of 2/3 tank or taunt minions. So you're able to wipe the board clean with Hellfire. It's just 1 extra board wipe. If you want to run the Bread Maker, you totally can. It's also a 3-cost card. It's common, pretty easy to get, so you can do that as well. So the last decks on this list are honorable mention decks, and these are 5 decks that I think deserve to be on this list, but didn't quite make the cut to get their own, section. So the first one is going to be Hand Buff Paladin. It's just not quite as good as Secret Libram Paladin. If you're going to play Paladin, just play Libram. The next one, or the next 2, are Quest Rogue and Warrior. These decks just don't feel as powerful as some of the other quest decks in the meta right now. Like Warrior, once you finish your quest, it is still a big accomplishment, but it doesn't end the game the next turn like the Mage one or even the Warlock one does. You still have a couple of turns you need to go to win. And Rogue, I just feel like if you get shut down early or the opponent controls the board or gains armor in some way, there's not really much that the Rogue can do to get that extra damage. They basically got Scabs, give him Stealth and Wind Fury, and hope that bursts the opponent, which is just not quite a good enough win condition for me. And the last 2 decks on this list are only on here because they're too hard to play reliably, and that is Garrote Rogue and OTK Demon Hunter. GMs mess up with Garrote Rogue, so if you're using this deck to climb to Legend for the first time, or just in general from Diamond, don't try this deck out. Try a simpler deck and maybe use Garrote Rogue, and the same goes for OTK Lifesteal Demon Hunter. Use those once you get to Legend. They're not bad decks, don't get me wrong. They deserve to be on this list. They're very powerful, especially if you're a high-level player. But at the level I'm predicting you guys are at, which is probably somewhere between Gold and Diamond, trying to push to ranks you haven't been before, I would not recommend them personally, because even I have a 50% win rate with them, which is not great, and I am a seasoned veteran at this game who gets Legend every single season. So that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully you guys enjoy these tier list things where I do this about once a week just to give you a breakdown of the meta. And if you want to see something more where I tell you what's going on in the Hearthstone meta, I can do that as well.